Welcome to Becoming Heisenberg. It's Entertainment Talks podcast for Breaking Bad on AMC and Netflix. I'm your host Matthew. Joining me today, my co-host is David. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
Good. We're back with another episode of Breaking Bad, season 1, episode 3, and the bag's in the river. Last week it was called Cats in the Bag, and now the bag is in the river. So following up with the title, I think I know in terms of Breaking Bad what that might be referencing. You've got a reference to hand yourself.
Yes, yeah. The title is actually a line from a 1957 film called Sweet Smell of Success, in which a character reports that he has resolved an issue. So the title literally that it is the fact that Walt and Jesse captured Crazy Eight. I mean, that's what it's directly a reference to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Well,
it works in other contexts as well, I think.
yeah, what I think you could also do with that is you've got cats in the bag. So to me, that Emilio is captured downstairs. I know he's not in
Yes.
a bag and he's not a cat, but you see what I'm going with there. And then the bag's in the river. That could be a metaphor for killing somebody and getting rid of a body, which
Well,
they did also
basically
do
it.
in this episode as well. And obviously you do get Crazy Eight getting killed in this episode. So that's a pretty good reference for that. I mean, I've not really said this before, but in terms of episode titles for TV shows, I don't really care what they're called.
No.
But because some shows, things like House of Cards and other things, do like Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and that's like, okay, fair enough. Aside from all that, what do you think of the episode?
I really enjoyed this as well. Again, I'm just going back to this of I wasn't entirely sure how I feel about rewatching it, and I'm just loving every episode because I can't quite remember exactly what happened from when I watched it the first time. So I hadn't exactly remembered how they killed Crazy Eight or why they killed Crazy Eight, and it's such a beautiful kind of realization as to the reason why Walt does it at the end. I just think that's such a lovely little bit of the episode. We're also getting to the point that Walt has to sort of start confessing about the cancer as well, which is kind of coming up. And it's really interesting just to see Walt sort of wrestling with the issue of Crazy Eight and what he's actually going to do. There's some lovely comedic scenes between Walt and Jesse. I mean, full on kind of almost Keystone Cops type, like chasing each other around the house with the bag of meth, which is just brilliant and shows the level of comedy you can actually get into a show like this.
Yeah.
And the brilliant comic timing of the two leads as well of Aaron and Brian. It's just great. I really enjoyed this throughout. We got to see a bit more of Marie and Hank as well, and that sort of relationship. I'd forgotten that that Marie had this shopping thing that kind of runs on. I've forgotten that starts so early.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that was something they kind of introduced in the later seasons, but no, it's like third episode and she's already stealing shoes. So
Yeah, to me, this is still a really great episode of Breaking Bad. It's got a lot of elements in here as well. Like you said, you've got the really dark stuff of Walter getting his first kill. You've got the comedic stuff with, like you said, Jesse and Walter, chasing each other around in this house because it's bag of meth, and they're still blaming each other for stuff, and then they realize they have to get stuff done. The two things I specifically remembered about this episode was the broken plate thing. And I kind of remembered once the bike chain came into the equation, I was like, oh yeah, he strangles him with that. So I remembered that. I couldn't quite remember that he stabbed Walter in the leg, but I do remember that he was swinging backwards as he's sort of turning him around and strangling him. So those were the two big things I remembered from the episode. This episode does have probably Breaking Bad's biggest problem, which to me is the Marie stuff, which at the end of the
yeah,
day, when you look at Breaking Bad, it doesn't really matter a whole lot, but it's just one of them things where, like, So you've got your main characters and that, like obviously you've got Walter and Jesse. They are the two main characters. They're the ones that are doing this whole drug thing. You've got Hank, the DEA stuff, the two ways that ties in, which is tying into the drug stuff that Jesse and Walter are doing, and the fact that he's his brother-in-law, and if he catches him it'll be bad. And then you've got Skylar and the whole trust stuff, and then everything about Walter lying about his job and things. And then you've kind of got Marie, who's like, okay, Marie gives Hank someone to kind of bounce off of, someone else to live with and be in a relationship and that. But there's just the one missing piece, which is that they never really give Marie much interesting stuff to do.
No,
but
yeah, that has been a problem.
Yeah, so that probably is the weakest part of Breaking Bad. But like I said, when the show's all said and done and that, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah,
it's just one of them things that's a little bit of a kind of waste of screen time in a way. And I kind of look back at it now and think, like, could Vince and the writers and the team and that, could they have given Marie just something different, a bit more interesting to do, because she can't really be involved with the whole DEA stuff. I do like the scene though when Marie's trying to talk to Hank, and Hank's like shouting at these criminals and all that, and he's like, sorry, what were you saying? Yeah, that was one particularly good little piece of the episode. But yeah, just this whole thing with her stealing shoes and heels and all that sort of thing, it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the show, and it's not specifically bad, it just really doesn't fit in with anything else. It's just something to give Marie to do, basically.
Yeah, and the problem is, in places it does feel like that they've just done that to give Marie something to do. That is probably one of the only real flaws of the show, is the handling of Marie's character.
Mm-hmm.
It, and as I say, it's not bad as such. It's not particularly badly done, but it does feel a bit crowbarred in to give that character more screen time and something to do. Mm-hmm. Which is a bit of an issue. But
see, at the end of the day, that I think that is Breaking Bad's biggest problem. But then when you look back at things, it doesn't matter that much. So the show's actual biggest problem doesn't really matter, which tells you how good the rest of the show is. So, exactly. But yeah, you've got other really big moments. Walter's first kill and his just massive struggle over these last couple of episodes with that. That's really, really big as well. So like I said, you've still got some excellent stuff in here. And then you do have more stuff with Hank and Gomi, which is really cool. So yeah, overall it's still a very good episode. But it's just got, unfortunately, one of the weakest parts of the show in it. So there's that. Let's move on to the actual episode itself.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Donnie, and I host the Adulting with Donnie podcast. And this is not the show to listen to if you're trying to be a better adult. I started this podcast as a way to offload some thoughts that I have throughout the week. My topics vary widely every week. Movies I've seen, guns and gun control, sex, people that are stupid, why I don't care about celebrity opinions, TV shows, snowmobiling. The list goes on and on. I'm always taking topic suggestions from fans of the show too. So join me each week on Adulting with Donnie as I pour some bourbon and allow you to see the inner workings of the mind of a madman. Live free and rant hard.
I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are Killer Fun. We explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week.
For as long as people have been communicating, they have been talking about who did what to whom, and is that socially acceptable?
Because the boundaries of society,
crime,
and entertainment have always gone hand in hand.
The more salacious,
or weird,
the better. From books and movies
to television shows and games,
we look at how life and art imitate and inform one another.
And we can't get together and not laugh. So let's face it, there's going to be laughing.
Killer Fun is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, so join us.
Today's sponsor is Kualu. If you'd like to get started with a domain name and a website today, just click on the link in the show notes and that will take you over to Kualu to get started. They also have a live support chat system that you can use, which is in the bottom right hand corner. So get started with a new website and domain name today with Kualu. Hey everybody, if you would like to get the ad-free versions of all of our podcasts and support Entertainment Talk along the way, all you need to do is head over to patreon.com/entertainment talk. Sign up either as a creator or as a Patreon, there's no difference there. That's just the option for either becoming a creator now or just staying as a patron for the moment. And then all you need to do is support us at the $1 level tier. That will get you access to all of the ad-free podcasts that we've done in the past, and get you access to all the ad-free podcasts in that month as well. So it's a great way to support us on Entertainment Talk and to get rid of the ads and get your ad-free podcasts. You can also become a patron at the $3 level tier. That gets you access to ad-free podcasts and allows you to redeem a review of a TV show or a film of entirely your choice. That's one per month for either a TV show or a film review, which is at the $3 level tier. As always, thank you very much for listening. Back to the show. So Walt and Jesse clean up the bloody remains of Amelia while Crazy 8 regains consciousness in the basement. Walt talks to a woman in a flashback about percentages of human beings and what things add up to, and getting into very small percentages. And then the cold open ends with them not being able to figure out what one of the last percents is, and then they figure it out in the end. One of the last things that Walter suggests is the soul. And then they sort of come up with the answer in that sort of way. One really cool thing to point out here, which might not seem like a big deal to some people, is some of the camera work continuing in this show when you've got the wiping of the blood at the start of the episode. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and some of, from what I remember, with El Camino, the sequel film to Breaking Bad, they're really good at this sort of cinematography type of stuff, these little like shots like that. It's just a different and kind of stylish way to sort of film things, and it's not something you have to do, it just gives like an extra sort of touch to the episodes. But we see them kind of cleaning up the blood from the falling of the ceiling last week, from the bathtub, and Jesse's mistake and all that. So what do you think of this opening?
Yeah, no, I'm very much with you on that. In terms of the cinematography, is phenomenal throughout. Michael Slovitz is the main cinematographer. He did 50 episodes compared to sort of a few other people stepping in, presumably when they just had too much to do. He's a phenomenal cinematographer, and did just some amazing work on this. I rather like that. It's quite a nice little opening where you have, the bit where you have sort of him going back and sort of clearly at college, or very early in his life, trying to work out the composition of a human body. And I don't think it's anything we ever revisit at any point, as far as I remember. It's like very much a little sort of one-off thing, but it's quite interesting to see just that little bit of background of him kind of doing science and being excited by it. It's a sort of very much more energetic version of Walt than you sort of see as the downtrodden teacher, when we meet him later on. Yeah. So it's quite interesting to see him like that, as a sort of a young guy that's going to take on the world, at the time, is the idea. Mm-hmm. So that's quite nice. The scene of them cleaning stuff up, I also spotted some of the camera work there, which I think was just really, really well done. Like, there's a shot of him actually wiping this horrible goo off the floor, but they've used like a piece of perspex, so it's like you're looking up through the floor, which I thought was quite clever. It's really nicely done, that. And I mean, that must have been horrendous putting that scene together. just yeah. And then they've got them showering off in kind of kiddie paddling pools later on as well. Which I swear, I'm sure, if you notice, Jesse actually aims at Walt's crotch at one bit, because you see him wince. Yeah. It's just really funny. I thought that was that whole sequence is really good. I rather enjoyed that.
Yeah, again, somehow adding comedy to a pretty dark situation.
Yeah.
This dead body's just falling through the roof and falling into loads of parts, and Jesse's like still not like in a specifically bad way, but is kind of messing about a bit, but not in a way that's going to put them in, further danger or
Yeah.
whatever. And like I've said before, it's a good way to have their two personalities sort of clash. Jesse's this sort of more silly, kind of clumsy character, at least at this point in the story, and Walt's always been kind of more serious. But then Jesse still is serious about other things as well, like when he says about the flipping of the coin and you need to get your job done, and so he's not like completely just messing about. He has sort of grown up at least a little bit, but yeah, you still very much got that going on in the relationship or in the partnership, whatever you'd call it at this point. So it's a pretty good scene. So that's a cold open as well. While talking with Walt, Crazy 8 reveals that Jesse told him and Amelia about Walt's personal life. Walt then confronts Jesse in the middle of him getting off of the meth, who berates him for not living up to his end of the bargain and on the two, and then he drives off. So then they have the argument. Jesse goes off for a little bit and leaves Walt kind of to it, because he says like, look, you have got to do your end of the deal. And yes, I'm getting high and whatnot, but I did do at least, my end of the deal. He still didn't do it successfully, but at least he tried to do it, whereas Walter has just been kind of sitting around a little bit for a couple of days and not really trying to kill Crazy 8, which is admittedly obviously the harder job, to kill someone as opposed to getting a box. But you can see Jesse's point, like Walt's having a go at him for like getting high and all this stuff, but then Jesse's got the point of like, look, we flipped a coin, we made a deal, this is a partnership, you have to at least try to do your end. So you can see where both sides are kind of coming from, but I think Jesse's more in the right here, and he gets annoyed and just drives off because he's kind of had enough.
But
so
on taking it from Walt's side, the fact that Jesse is still getting high off his own supply, which isn't good. What was interesting actually in this scene is Walt seems, they cooked that. Presumably that bag is the bag of meth that they basically cooked, and Jesse makes some comment about that's worth 40 grand, and Walt's quite prepared to just flush it because Jesse's getting high off it. Yeah, to stop Jesse. Which, as I say, has this great sort of almost Keystone Cops kind of, them running through the house and he chucks it out the window and like trying to beat each other down, which I thought was brilliant, and it's just wonderfully kind of comic that. But yeah, I really like this sort of whole sequence, and again, it shows you this sort of where Walt's mind is at that point, of the fact that the whole purpose for doing this was to make money, but to stop Jesse from actually getting high off it, he's prepared to flush the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're totally right with the fact of like, in order to stop Jesse, he is literally willing to, just flush the money down the toilet and kind of just, get rid of the progress that they've made, I suppose. So it's an interesting thing for them to do, and at least in this point of the story as well, you've still got almost kind of a tool for the writers to use, which is Walter coughing at inappropriate moments, when he's dealing with Crazy 8, and it leads to the whole plate thing later, and he's trying to chase Jesse here, and he's coughing when he's falling down the stairs and all that. So it's a bit of obviously an inconvenience, but it's an interesting kind of tool for them to use for the character in a way, because it sort of stops certain things from happening. In a way. Did you get what I mean with that? Like,
I know what you mean. They're able to use that as a way of incapacitating Walt quite easily, when in this particular case he should have been able to catch up with Jesse, but he couldn't because he collapses on the stairs, and then of course they use that again later as well. So
so an interesting scene. Meanwhile, Skylar tells Marie that she is working on a new short story. She mentioned this a couple of episodes ago as well, with a stoner character in it, and she asks her about her marijuana, because she said, you did pot in, was it high school or something like that? So she's kind of making the assumption based on that kind of. Marie assumes that Skylar thinks Walt Jr. is smoking pot because he's going off with this friend and all that sort of thing, but Skylar insists that she was just talking about her story, so some kind of interesting stuff there. Marie asks Hank to scare Walt Jr., leading him to bring Walt Jr. to a motel to show how meth has led this prostitute down a bad path. This Wendy character.
Yes.
We'll talk about that separately in a minute, but so this is some of the better side of Marie's character. Her relationship with her sister and all that, and them just kind of talking about the other sort of family members and trying to figure out what's going on with Walt Jr. and all that. It's better than the whole shoe stealing stuff that they've got going on with her. And it involves multiple characters. It does involve Hank later and Walt Jr. and you kind of see his sort of lack of, well, not really kind of lack of care, but also he's just kind of confused as well at certain points about when he goes on this drive along with Hank, and we do see Wendy, who's kind of a famous in a way Breaking Bad character. But what do you think of Skylar and Marie here? I think this is a better scene for Marie to be in.
It shows how much of a kind of Karen busybody Marie is, which, to use sort of more modern terms of what we kind of come to look at that sort of character. She's kind of uptight. She will stick her nose in where it's not wanted. She refuses to be even admit the fact that she smoked pot in high school, which is one of the things that's quite interesting about how this show is aged slightly. In the US attitude towards marijuana at this point is much different to how it was when the show went out, because it's legal in half the states. So there is that which is interesting. But the scene's quite that scene's quite good. I do like the scene with Hank and Walt actually in the car afterwards as well. I mean, I think RJ Mitty doesn't get enough props for that character, because, I mean, he does have cerebral palsy, RJ Mitty, but nowhere near to the extent of that character has it.
Yeah.
It is actually a really clever, well put together performance. That he is a person with cerebral palsy in real life, but I mean he came over and did Comic-Con in the UK a couple of years ago now, and I watched him talk, and you really wouldn't know very much. You could tell that there was something, but you wouldn't know that he had cerebral palsy really. So it's one of those things that's you can tell that it is there, but it's nowhere near to the level of Walt Jr. So that is a brilliant acting performance, to be able to pull that off so well, I think. I don't think he gets quite enough credit for that.
Yeah, I kind of agree in a way. I mean, like, a bunch of the Emmy winners from the show has often been, Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston and that. And when people do talk about, the best acting from the show, RJ isn't really in the conversation very much, which is a bit of a shame. And I've kind of realised as well on this kind of rewatch of Breaking Bad that he does do a very good job. He's just a bit more of a on the side kind of character, I suppose. Yeah. Like he's involved with a lot of things going on, but he's not sort of involved as certain other characters as well. But it's it leads to some interesting stuff here with Skylar and Marie. So
I like that scene with Hank as well of just Walt Jr. being incredibly confused as to why he's been brought here and shown this setup of why is his uncle bringing him to this place to warn him against marijuana, because he has no clue what's going on. It's just quite nicely played that. And then like you say, you would get to meet Wendy for the first time, and you find that that's where Jesse's gone, and he's in that room, so
yeah, that was an interesting kind of revelation, I suppose. I'd forgotten about that, because she goes back to her hotel room and Jesse's there all kind of paranoid about, because there's a DEA agent outside. And then she has sex with him, which I forgot happened as well. I completely forgot that Jesse was in that scene at all. So that was interesting. But he is still in that side of things, isn't he? So he's going to be doing that sort of thing. So, but yeah, in terms of Walt Jr. and Hank, I think the two of them bounce off each other pretty well here. I know most of the talking's obviously done from Hank's side, but yeah, his just confusion about I get it, meth is bad and all that, and Hank's asking him about do you know the bad effects of this and stuff, and he's just completely Okay, yeah, I get it, sort of thing. But why are we here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but his parents have his suspicions. So, or at least the mum does. So, or Skylar does in this situation. So, yeah, I mean, Hank helped out here, which is pretty cool. I want to talk about the scene leading up to that as well. Which is with Hank and Marie when she's stealing the shoes and stuff. And then you get the scene with Hank talking to her on the phone. I just really like the sort of, there's a little bit of comedy in there with him trying to gently sort of talk to his wife and stuff. Yeah, with him just kind of trying to calmly ask his wife about them kind of trying to sort of calmly talk to each other, and then yeah, he's just like full on shouting at these criminals and that, and then he just turns around and he's like, "Sorry, honey, what was that?" I thought that was a pretty well done scene. So I like the two of them there. I mean, overall, I really like Hank as a character. Whether he's doing stuff with Gomi, or he's talking to Walt Jr., or he's talking to Marie. I think it's some pretty good stuff. So yeah, what do you think of their interaction, Hank and Marie, with the phone call and that?
Oh yeah, I rather like that phone call, just because he's kind of in the middle of this bust, and you've got this kind of craziness going on of him kind of shouting, stop that, sit down, and she's like, really, and he's like, well, you called me, you called him at work. This is what he does for a living. What did you expect?
Yeah. Because she thinks she kind of does think like, oh, you're not like paying attention to me, but he is in the middle of this pretty big job, and these criminals kind of aren't listening to him and that. So
I love the way he's first of all, the fact that it shows something about Hank as well, and the fact that one, he's in the middle of a bust and decides to take a phone call for his wife as well, which is and he's being, oh, hi honey, what's up, it's despite the fact that there's all this craziness going on around him, the fact that he decides to pick up and just have this normal conversation, which could have been anything from, I mean, can you pick up groceries on the way home, to, I mean, it could have been anything, but it's just the fact that Hank would actually just pick it up and have this perfectly normal conversation whilst he's in the middle of this massive bust. It's just really, I shows again something about those two characters, her kind of obliviousness to the world around her to a certain extent, and Hank just not really, how he sees his attitude towards the criminals and towards the job of, well, it's a job, and if my wife calls, I'm going to answer, and it just shows more sides to those characters, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it shows the two kind of sides to Hank as well. Yes, he is this big kind of, he likes to kind of show people up like he did with Walter in the pilot, and he likes to kind of be this big sort of guy, and kind of like he likes to show off and things like that. So he has got that personality to himself, but he's also, he does try to still be a good guy and do what's right and all that. So he is he's one of my more favorite characters from Breaking Bad, I think. So. Yeah. Walt, France.
Sorry, just before we get onto that, just to point out the opening scene, which I forgot to mention, is the first time we see Gretchen as well, because the girl that Walt is talking to in that scene is Gretchen, who pops up in season 2 and then again in season 5, and becomes a much bigger part, later on, but. It's weird that scene was, that character was planted so early on, and I don't know whether that was planned or whether it was just something that they came up with afterwards. But I
was trying to figure out who that was, because I was looking at that scene thinking like, surely I should remember who this person is. But yeah, that makes sense as well.
Yes, so. I knew I recognised her at the time. We just went to look it up. She's apparently married to the Jessica Hirsch, who plays the character of Gretchen. He's actually married to the director of that episode, so that may be how she got the gig in the first place. But yes, she does turn up in quite a large way, certainly in the 5th season.
Yeah, definitely. Walt, phones Skylar to apologise for being late, falsely claiming that he's working over at the car wash. Skylar informs Walt that she knows he quit his job there 2 weeks ago previously, and angrily tells him not to come home. So Walter has been caught out in the situation. Of course, he can't tell her the truth, because then he'd have an even bigger problem on his hands.
Yes.
And it would probably have to involve Hank, and the whole thing. The show wouldn't last 5 seasons at that point.
Yes.
Again, more of a kind of dent in their relationship. We sort of saw with last week with the whole baby thing, and him saying like, I want you to get out from my arse and all that sort of stuff when they were going for the baby scan. And she clearly knows something is up with Walter. But she obviously can't quite tell what it is. She probably thinks like, an affair's happening or something like that, because that's kind of a typical thing, isn't it? Usually, if your spouse or your partner or whatever lies about being home late from work or something like that, or says that they stayed late at work and they didn't, sometimes the first thing that someone will jump to is like, they've been seeing someone else. So we'll see how that develops as well. But again, more interesting stuff between some of the bigger characters in the show.
It's an interesting scene, because it's the first time we kind of see her really catching Walt out in a lie, and the way she's handling it, which is what the conversation, of course, about the pot was earlier, of her going, well, did it change your attitude? Or maybe that's an explanation for it, because I think yes, she probably did have the idea of maybe he's having an affair, but I don't know whether that idea sticks in her head, or she thinks it's kind of ridiculous. So maybe it's the pot. Maybe he's having a midlife crisis. I mean, you don't know, do you? But she clearly knows that something's going on, and he's going to have to come clean. So
so we shall see how that works out. Meanwhile, Hank and several DEA agents discover the cook site in the desert, along with Crazy 8's car, which has got this bump feature on it. You're more of a car person. Do you know what that's called? It's to like make his car bop up and down.
Yeah, it's got like it's a on the is it on the bonnet of the car? It's
something like that. Yeah,
it's like an airflow. It's an air intake, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's an air intake for the engine.
Yeah, so Hank talks about that. Inside the car they find the small bag of crystal meth cooked by Walt, but they don't know that he did it, obviously. The family of Native Americans shares the lab mask that they found, that the young girl found in the previous episode. So that was the little thing that we had at the end of last week, and they found it in the same sort of desert. I really like in this scene again, just more, pairing sort of friendship, relationship type of stuff. Hank and Gomi in this scene, Gomez is sort of talking about like, I searched this car, I didn't find nothing, and Hank's like, no, wait a minute, if I hit like here or somewhere there, and then he hits this thing open and finds it, and Gomi's like, oh, he beat me. It is like a competition between the two of them, isn't it? And just this thing about, because you saw it in the pilot when they were betting on, I think, what race the person was. So they like to kind of do that sort of stuff, and just him kind of saying like, I bet they didn't like bet money in this scene, but just him sort of saying like, I bet I'll find something, and Gomi's like, no, you're not going to find nothing. And just as soon as the thing pops open, he finds it. Just the look on both their faces, it's really great. And again, these are two of some of the smaller characters in the show, especially Gomi, I think, more so than Hank. But yeah, when you have a scene like this with the two of them, I thought it was pretty great. So, and then they find the gas mask. So
yes, which is a tie back, because we were talking last week about, I can't remember whether that gas mask actually shows up anywhere again, and it does in this episode, because they bump into the Native American kids, and there's the gas mask. So I'd completely forgotten that it was quite this early on where they start to discover this new strain of meth, because he does pick up the bag and look at it and go, this doesn't look, this is too white for being meth.
Yeah, they point out,
of course,
how clear it is, and
I mean, the signature blue meth that, of course, everybody knows about doesn't come in until later. But this is kind of interesting. That it's this early that they start to find it.
What do you think of Hank and Gomez's relationship in this scene, or the sort of discovery, I suppose?
I really like the back and forth between these two guys. It's one of the nice kind of comedy elements of, they're big, they're tough, they're cops, they have this kind of this jokey back and forth, the thing's a job to them, but it's a job that they both really really like doing, and they love busting people, and it's the fact that they're betting on stuff, and yeah, I really like the relationship between these two. I find it really fun, and Hank going in and kind of showing off that he knows where they hide drugs in the car and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Again, this show finding ways to, well, we're going to talk about a particularly dark scene in a minute, but finding ways to mix comedy and drama and not make it feel like the tone's all over the place. Because some shows, such as The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, doesn't know how to do that sort of stuff properly, and when you do that sort of thing wrong, sometimes in certain scenes you're not sure where you're supposed to take it seriously or where you're supposed to laugh. But yeah, Breaking Bad does that really well. So that's pretty good. Walt weighs the pros and cons of killing Crazy 8, then collapses on the basement floor while bringing him a sandwich, shattering the plate. Remember the plate for later on. After he regains consciousness, Walt tells Crazy 8 he has lung cancer, which is the first person he actually tells, because he hasn't told anybody yet. Not Jesse, he hasn't told Skylar, he hasn't told Hank or his son or anybody else. So that's the first person that he tells. After engaging in a conversation with Crazy 8 and seemingly forming a bond with him, Walt decides to let him go free. Walt goes to the key to get the key for the bike lock, which is holding Crazy 8 captive. However, he realizes that there's a large shard missing from the broken plate because he takes it out of the bin and all that when he goes to throw away a beer can, indicating that Crazy 8 has obtained it while he was unconscious and plans to use it as a weapon. Walt reluctantly chokes Crazy 8with the bike lock while he stabs backwards into Walt's leg with the broken plate, and then he does finally kill Crazy 8. Really, really big scene. Big scene for Walter, who is the main character of the show. And it's his first kill, and yeah, we got a few kind of revelations here about, he talks to Crazy 8 about, I think it's his granddad, his dad or his granddad or somebody, about this insurance thing, and they're always talking about that, and then he says, like, I remember going there, and they start to bond and they start to drink a bit, and yeah, he finds it's pretty much the turning moment, isn't it, when he realizes he's searching through these pieces of the broken plate and realizes like, no, this relationship hasn't been going as well as what I thought it has for the last half an hour.
What's so beautifully played about that is, he kind of goes upstairs to make a second sandwich, and he goes to the bin and walks away, and then suddenly something clicks, and he goes and looks back in the bin, and he's like, hang on a minute, that there doesn't look to be enough plate there, and puts it back together. And the look of, he's made this decision to release Crazy 8, and then it's so beautifully played by Bryan Cranston of him trying to piece this plate together and like willing the pieces to be there, because he knows what it means if that piece isn't there, that he has to do something about it. It's so well played of him kind of just there going, no, this isn't, no, why, because it also is a clever bit of narrative device, because it in some ways abdicates the responsibility of Walt being, not doing it in cold blood, because if you hadn't had that and Walt had just thought, no, it's safer to kill him, that would have been Walt making a sort of premeditated decision to take somebody else's life, which is kind of an inherently evil choice, and that would have been quite out of character for Walt. The ability, the adding in of this thing about the fact that Crazy 8 has taken this part of the plate gives him an out in some ways of being able to kind of go, well, and clearly he's struggling with it. The fact that I was going to let him go, but clearly if I do that now, he's going to try and kill me. And he even gives him a sort of opportunity when he goes back downstairs. It's like, if I let you out, you're going to stab me with that piece of plate you've been holding. And that's when he actually ends up having to do it. So it is kind of in self-defense that he ends up killing him, even though the guy is still attached to the pole at the time. But it is essentially self-defense. So it's a very clever bit of writing that kind of gives you a way of seeing Walt as a sort of more sympathetic character than he would have been had he just made the decision to be able to just go and, he's not safe to be, Crazy Eight's not safe to be let out, therefore I'm just going to kill him. So it's a really, really clever bit of writing, and it suits Walt in the fact that he's kind of looked at this and he's the type of person that could probably kind of take a look at parts of a plate and go, hang on a minute, there doesn't look to be enough there. He has that sort of analytical mind of, understanding shapes and forms and that sort of thing. So, I think it's a really clever bit of writing. That whole sequence of putting you almost onto Walt, managing to put you to more extent onto Walt's side than feeling sorry in any way for Crazy Eight, or maybe you do slightly of going, why did you do that? You were about to get out of there, and if you hadn't taken that bit of plate, you probably would have, been let go. Admittedly, he would have then come back and killed Walt and his entire family, but it sort of, it was the only way it could have ended. But I just think that whole sequence is a really clever bit of writing to put you more on Walt's side. I just really, really great sort of piece of work, and Breaking Bad at its finest, I think, there.
Yeah, I mean, you've also got the tie-in of, again, the coughing and the cancer coming back, and he's really coughing going down these stairs, and then actually faints and drops the plate, and then it all just connects up so nicely. But yeah, it's his first kill. It's a big deal for him, and it's kind of a shame for Walter as well, because they do genuinely seem like they're kind of getting along. Because in the back of your mind that whether you're watching this for the first time or for the whatever second, third, or whatever. You kind of know in the back, there's certain points, if you look at the way that Crazy Eight looks at Walt, he's kind of looking a little bit for that opportunity. He's still talking to him, and there is a little bit of a sense of bonding there. I don't think it's completely sinister the entire scene, but there's switches a little bit in Crazy Eight's character where he is genuinely bonding with him a bit, and they're talking about his family from the past and this insurance thing or whatever it was. And you can see a little bit of bonding there, but then at the same time you can kind of see with Crazy Eight that he's kind of still thinking okay, I am still tied up to this thing, this guy could still kill me. He does have the plate and stuff at that point. And then they're drinking, they're both kind of getting drunk, and for Walter's side as well, this is probably one of the best conversations he's had with somebody in quite some time, because you can see the rift with him and his wife Skylar. That's not been obviously great for a long time. He kind of gets on with Hank, but obviously Hank's the big kind of hot-headed, more successful brother. He doesn't really get on with his son that well. At that point, his relationship with Jesse was a bit fractured because of the whole flip the coin deal. And in that moment for Walter, it's sort of okay, although this guy is a criminal who tried to kill me, and I will probably have to kill him, this is the best conversation he's probably had with somebody in quite some time. Probably since the scene with Gretchen at the start of the episode, actually, because you can kind of see some similarities between the two. I know they're very different conversations, but you can kind of see okay, he used to be this much happier sort of science teacher and all that, and then he got into his midlife crisis kind of stuff and was stuck at these sort of dead end jobs, and lung cancer hits him, etc., and then he ends up in this scene with Crazy Eight, and he actually starts to bond with somebody a little bit. So it's a shame in a way, because they both of these characters know in the back of their mind okay, we are bonding here a bit, but we still pretty much know what kind of has to happen. One of us is going to die, and if it's Walter, then that means that Skylar and probably Walt Jr., maybe not Hank, because Hank's DEA agent and all that, but he probably will kill Walter, and then probably he'll probably kill Jesse as well, and then kill the rest of his family. So they both kind of know that, but it's a kind of nice scene in a certain way, but then it's still got the stuff in the back of their mind, and then he ultimately has to kill him. So
there is a certain amount of comedy in the death as well, in the way that Walt actually does it. The sort of choking him using the bike lock to actually choke him, but all the way through it is going, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. You know, he's kind of...
He doesn't really want to do it, but
Yeah,
he knows he has
tell,
to.
and again, it's a great bit of acting by Bryan Cranston for this. You know, it is played so beautifully throughout, and to see, you know, he's still very much Walt at this point, and whilst this is one of the things which is a catalyst to him turning towards Heisenberg again, it's one of those things that it's still very much Walt that's killing this guy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't want to do it, doesn't want to be there, you know, and the conversations that he's had with Crazy 8 about, I need any excuse not to do this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's got a bit of everything, this scene.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. And then yeah, he kills him, and then that's the end of the scene pretty much. Walt goes back home to find Skylar sitting on the bed crying because obvious reasons, and he says, I've got something to tell you, and then the episode ends there. So not too much to talk about with this last scene as much as the previous one. It's more of a kind of cliffhanger setup for next week, the next episode and stuff. But it's still a relatively good way to end the episode, I think. Going back to, yes, he still has got his home. He hasn't been there for a long time. Him and Skylar are probably due for a big conversation, and this is kind of leading up to it. So
yeah.
Any small thoughts maybe on the final scene here?
No, I mean, there's not really an awful lot to say other than, I mean, it sets up the next episode, which is presumably going to be, I don't remember exactly, but presumably the thing that he's coming out to say is the fact that he has cancer, and that's where we get into that bit. But yeah, at least that goes to some way to explaining his weird attitude.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And in some ways he ends up using the cancer as a cover for the fact that he's been cooking meth. So, you know.
Yeah, it's a kind of excuse for that as well. So one thing I've kind of realised through these 3 episodes is, because some stuff we don't quite remember, like there's the big scenes that we remember, obviously, like Death of Crazy 8 and some stuff like that, but it is kind of cool to go back to certain scenes of this show and not actually remember what's happening, because then it kind of feels like you're watching certain scenes for the first time. I know we've both seen the show before, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't remember every single little thing. So some scenes are a little bit more fresh than others, and then they kind of lead to the, you know, the big moments and that. So it's been an interesting experience so far. How have you found it?
Yeah, as I say, coming into this episode, I couldn't remember exactly what happened to Crazy 8. I'd assumed that they killed him, and I seem to remember he died at some point, but I couldn't remember exactly what the situation was. Mm-hmm. So, because it has been a long time since, I mean, you know, it's probably been 10 years since I watched the first episode of, you know, the first season of this. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, it's been nice going back and watching it again, because I don't really remember this first season. There are only 7 episodes in this first season. I hadn't realised.
And that's the end of the episode. You can find everything else that we've got on entertainmenttalk.org. Like we said, I'm trying not to say this every single week, but obviously we don't have any feedback yet. We'll sort that out later. So there's none of that to read. But if you'd like to send in your thoughts, feelings, questions, comments about Breaking Bad or anything related to Entertainment Talk, don't hesitate to ask. Matthew at entertainmenttalk.org, Twitter eTalkUK, there's the contact page and information in your show notes. You can find everything else that we've got on entertainmenttalk.org. If you'd like to support the podcast and Entertainment Talk, that would be really cool and really great as well. We are on Patreon. You can have a look at the $1 and $3 level tiers for instant podcast, ad-free podcast, and review options. Amazon affiliate link. If you're buying stuff on Amazon, we can get a small cut of what you spend, but it won't cost you extra. iTunes feeds, please go and rate, review, subscribe to those. There'll be the Becoming Heisenberg podcast feed out there, the Becoming Soul for Better Call Saul one as well, and also the main Entertainment Talk feed. You can also find David on iTunes through Geektown. You can rate, review, subscribe to that. Geektown Radio Tuesdays, have a look out for that, and on geektown.co.uk for your up-to-date and reliable TV and film news, so check that out. If you'd like to have a look at Bex's stuff on Twitch, she is streaming daily, at least at the moment, at the time of recording. She's streaming daily. She probably will be at the time that this comes out. But go and check her out, Trista Bytes, Trista, Bytes. Go and have a look on there. Subscribe to her, follow her, support her, do all that cool stuff as well. Hopefully Barry is still doing horror podcast at the time that this comes out, so have a look at Talk and Stalk on YouTube. That's Talk and Stalk on YouTube, so go and subscribe to that, follow him on there and get involved over there. Word of mouth, you can tell people that you know about everyone's stuff and the website and the iTunes feeds, all that sort of thing, through word of mouth. Social media, Facebook and Twitter and different Facebook groups, you can use that. I'm streaming sometimes on Twitch. I might still be doing so at the time that this comes out, but I'm currently streaming Ghost of Tsushima, and then I'm going to return to Last of Us Part 2 with the New Game Plus, so have a look out for that, and also look out for Let's Play Sundays on Sundays. Thank you all very much for listening. We'll be back next week for episode 4, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.